Okay, let's unpack this. You're standing there in your kitchen. Maybe it's, a bit dated. Maybe it just doesn't quite work for how you live anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking renovation. But the sheer scale of it, it can feel like staring up at a mountain, can't it? Just utterly daunting, full of unknowns.
Yeah, that feeling of being overwhelmed is incredibly common. I mean, it's a huge undertaking. There's a significant emotional and, well, financial investment involved.
It really is. But what if we could approach it differently? Not as this, like, insurmountable task, but maybe as a series of clear steps, guided by someone who's actually, been through it all.
Okay.
That's kind of the mission for this deep dive. We're drawing from a really fantastic source. It's a personal account, almost like a girlfriend's guide,
Yeah.
from someone who successfully navigated their own kitchen transformation. And they've helped others do it too.
Right. So this source offers a perspective that's really grounded in like real world experience. It highlights the practical realities, maybe stuff that goes beyond just the latest design trends.
Exactly. So we're going to dive into this bag, pull out the absolute core strategies, the essential insights, and, the practical survival tips,
Sure.
things to help make your renovation journey feel more manageable.
And hopefully avoid some of those painful pitfalls.
Yes. And maybe even find some moments of, dare I say, satisfaction along the way.
We can hope. So we'll approach this conversation acknowledging the stress, because let's be real, it's stressful, but focusing on the actionable steps, maybe some surprising details from the source that can genuinely make a difference.
So when you're standing there, dreaming of the after, where does this guide insist you actually start? It throws you straight into the most fundamental reality: money, the budget.
Yeah, it's the non-negotiable starting point. Before you even think about aesthetics, you have to define your financial boundaries. The guide really stresses determining your absolute maximum spend.
Right, the absolute ceiling, not like a target you hope to haggle down from later.
Exactly. And here's a crucial insight, clearly born from experience. Immediately take, 15 to 20% off that absolute maximum.
Okay, wait, take it off. Why?
Yes, and you sort of ring fence that amount. It's your contingency fund. The source shares this really potent example, uncovering some old 1950s plumbing issues mid-reno. Cost them a sudden $1,800.
Ouch.
Yeah, and without that buffer built in right from the start, unexpected problems like that, they don't just add cost. They force these agonizing cuts somewhere else or, halt progress completely.
That makes total sense.
It's an insight into just how unpredictable things can be, especially in older homes.
So it's not just, like, poor planning that blows budgets. It's the hidden stuff lurking behind the walls. Okay, so total budget decided, buffer set aside. How does the guide suggest allocating the rest?
Well, they propose categorizing expenses. Think splurge, save, and sort of a middle ground.
Okay.
The insight here is to strategically invest in things you physically interact with every single day, like faucets, hardware maybe, or that one statement piece you truly love. Those are your splurges.
Right. Things you touch and feel.
Exactly. And you save on areas that are less visible or maybe where technology has made budget options genuinely pretty good these days. The middle ground is for those foundational elements where you need a balance of, value and durability.
So maybe don't overspend on, like, the hidden pipes themselves, but maybe invest in a faucet that feels great every single time you use it.
Precisely. And another often overlooked but really critical insight from the source, factor in the life during renovation costs.
Oh, yeah. What does that mean?
They highlight spending, I think it was $400 on takeout meals and another $300 on disposable plates and cutlery. And that was just over 6 weeks.
Wow, $700 on just food and paper plates? That's actually a significant hidden drain.
It really is. And it's an insight into the true cost of the disruption itself, not just the actual build. This is why the guide apparently refers to their budget spreadsheet as their kitchen renovation Bible.
Bible? Huh.
Yeah. Meticulously tracking everything, including these sort of soft costs, is presented as absolutely essential for staying sane and, well, on target financially.
So, for you listening, this upfront work on the budget, honestly confronting not just the build costs, but the buffer and those disruption costs, the source frames this as the key to saving relationships and your bank account.
It's really about empowerment through clarity, isn't it? Heading off major stress by trying to anticipate those potential pain points.
Okay, all right. With the financial reality firmly established, the source says then you can begin to really shape the dream. So the next step is finding your vision, and that covers both style and function.
And the guide is pretty adamant this happens before any demolition starts.
Right. Makes sense.
The insight here is avoiding that paralysis you feel when you're, say, staring at 500 different tile options with absolutely no framework for making a decision.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah.
The overwhelm is definitely real. How does the guide suggest tackling this then?
Well, collecting images is a classic technique,
Mm,
Pinterest boards, magazine tearouts. But the key insight is to actually analyze these collections. Look for recurring patterns, themes. What are you consistently drawn to? This helps reveal your authentic style, maybe beyond just the fleeting trends.
okay. So look for the common threads.
Mhm.
And instead of trying to cram in every single idea you like, the guide recommends picking just, what, 2 or 3 signature elements to anchor your design.
That's exactly it. It's a smart distillation strategy. The source's own example was matte black fixtures, white oak accents, and a statement pendant light over the island.
Okay.
Everything else in their design kind of supported those core choices. It made all the subsequent decisions much, much simpler. It's really an insight into narrowing down those infinite choices effectively.
The guide also posed some really practical, quite probing questions at this stage, too.
Yes, really good questions like, how long do you realistically plan to stay in this house? Because that impacts whether we prioritize, say, longevity or maybe more current trends.
Good point.
Also, what's your actual style? Not just what, social media tells you is popular right now. What about your current kitchen actually works well, even if it looks old?
What does work?
And critically, how do you really use the kitchen day to day? Not how you aspire to use it, but the reality.
That moves way beyond just aesthetics, doesn't it? It's a real insight into ensuring the renovation serves your actual lifestyle.
Absolutely. The source mentions their own personal must-have kitchen moment. It was creating a dedicated coffee station because that was just central to their morning routine.
A coffee station, I like that.
Identifying those specific functional needs is just as important as picking out paint colors, maybe more so.
So the insight here is really that understanding your unique needs, your genuine style, that ensures the space you create isn't just beautiful, but it truly, truly serves you.
Yeah, it transforms the space from just a room into like a truly personalized tool for living.
Okay. Now, when thinking about balancing that desired style with the budget realities we talked about, the source shared a specific example, a place where they found that kind of sweet spot fixtures.
Right. They impartially highlight their experience with a company called Design House. They noted they found exceptional value there, but also quality, style, and affordability all kind of rolled into one.
Okay. And what details did the source share that made this particular place stand out for them?
Well, they mentioned finding comprehensive collections, which sounds like a huge help for coordination, right? Think matte, black cabinet poles, faucets, and lighting that all just work together seamlessly.
Oh, that sounds like a massive time and stress saver right there, instead of hunting everywhere.
Definitely. It saves that hassle of searching across tons of different suppliers.
Mm.
They also appreciated things like online visualization tools and specifically called out a pull-down faucet they got. Said it looked identical to much more expensive ones they'd seen elsewhere.
Interesting. So this wasn't really an endorsement per se, but more like an example from the source's own journey. Finding a place that offered the look they wanted within their budget.
Exactly.
Illustrating how they navigated being overwhelmed by all the choices out there.
Precisely. It's presented as just a concrete instance of achieving that balance between the aesthetics and the affordability they were aiming for.
All right.
All right, so budget established, vision starting to form, maybe even a potential source for key items identified. Now, we hit the phase that tests everyone's patience, the timeline.
Oh, yes, the timeline. And the guide offers an immediate reality check here. Whatever timeline you think it will take, add more time.
Always add more time.
Their own initial plan was 6 weeks. It stretched to 10 weeks in the end, and they actually consider that pretty successful.
10 weeks, wow. Okay, so setting expectations right away is absolutely key then.
Right.
Based on the source, what's a more sort of realistic breakdown of the phases?
Well, they outline some typical durations. Planning itself can easily take 1-2 months, just the planning.
Then ordering materials, especially things like custom cabinets, that can be a lengthy process, like 12 weeks, sometimes even 3 months or more for custom stuff.
3 months waiting for cabinets.
It happens. Demolition is relatively quick, maybe 1-2 weeks. Rough construction, that's the behind-the-walls work. Framing, electrical, plumbing, usually 2-3 weeks. Cabinet installation itself, 1-2 weeks.
Right.
Countertop templating and installation takes another 1-3 weeks. And then the finishing touches backsplash, hardware, final electrical bits. That's another 1-2 weeks.
Yeah. When you lay it out like that, phase by phase, It definitely adds up quickly.
Yeah.
And ordering those long lead items like appliances, say 12 weeks out, the source highlights it as a critical milestone you absolutely cannot miss.
Yeah, that's crucial advice, especially now, with potential supply chain issues still lingering sometimes. The guide strongly recommends creating a detailed calendar right from day one.
Okay.
Mark those critical ordering dates. And this is important, build in buffer time between every single stage.
Adding buffer time between stages.
Yeah.
This is a really smart insight for managing those inevitable small delays that always seem to pop up.
Yeah, it prevents one little holdup from completely derailing the entire schedule downstream. Another practical tip they mention is strategically scheduling the most disruptive work, like the really loud demolition days.
Yeah.
Try to plan that for a time you can actually be out of the house, maybe a weekend trip or stay with family if you can.
Brilliant. Preserving sanity wherever possible. I like it. And having that detailed written timeline isn't just for you, is it? The guide notes, it's essential for keeping the contractor accountable too, keeping everyone aligned.
Absolutely. So the insight here is that managing expectations with a realistic, detailed timeline, it isn't about predicting the future perfectly. It's more about creating a framework to manage the inevitable stress when delays do happen.
Right. Okay, next up, and the source calls this the single most important decision of the entire project, building your team, finding the right contractor.
Yeah. This decision, it truly dictates the whole experience. The guide actually shares a kind of hard lesson learned from a previous project they had where a contractor just disappeared mid-job.
Oh, no. That's the nightmare scenario.
Exactly. It really highlights the stakes involved in this choice.
So how does the guide suggest finding someone reliable then to avoid that?
Well, personal recommendations are presented as the gold standard from people you trust who've had similar work done recently.
Makes sense.
Online reviews can be a good starting point, sure, but they really emphasize seeing the contractor's work in person, if possible, and definitely speaking directly to their previous clients about their actual experience working with them.
Okay, talking to past clients, what kind of probing questions should you ask during that interview process with potential contractors?
The source lists several really insightful ones, like, how do you handle unexpected issues or challenges when they arise? Because they will. What's your communication style during the project? How often will we actually hear from you? Can you provide references for your last, say, 3 kitchen projects specifically?
The last 3. Okay.
How do you manage and schedule your trade partners, the plumbers, electricians, etc.? And importantly, what does your payment schedule look like? Get that clear up front.
Those questions get at both the practical process and the communication style, which feels so important. And the guide puts a lot of emphasis on trusting your gut feeling, too, about the personalities involved.
Absolutely critical. You're going to be interacting with this person constantly during a pretty stressful period. The source gives an example of their current contractor sending daily texts with updates and photos, being highly responsive.
Oh, well, that sounds amazing.
That level of communication is just invaluable for peace of mind,
Definitely. And the non-negotiable step, the one thing you simply cannot skip.
Verifying licenses, checking insurance, and making absolutely sure they pull all the necessary permits for the work.
Right, permits.
The guide shares this cautionary tale about a neighbor. Their electrical work done without permits, failed inspection later on, required costly rework. So this documentation, it isn't just red tape. It's presented as essential protection and verification that they're competent.
Gotcha. So the real insight is that investing time up front in finding the right team isn't just about finding skilled labor. It's about finding a trustworthy partner to navigate the chaos with you.
It genuinely makes the difference between a total nightmare and, well, a challenging but ultimately manageable experience.
Okay, so you've planned meticulously, you've hired your dream team, hopefully. Now comes the hard reality. Actually living through the chaos.
Yes. This is where the guide acknowledges, patience wears really thin. The dust. Oh, the dust.
Yeah.
The constant takeout. Washing dishes in a tiny bathroom sink.
Ugh.
It's the messy middle that nobody really Instagrams, right?
So true.
Yeah.
How did the source cope then with this inevitable disruption? What were their tips?
They detail setting up a temporary kitchen, basically a folding table for prep, a microwave, an electric kettle, maybe a toaster oven. They borrowed a mini fridge. And they resorted to paper plates and disposable cutlery. They admit it's not ideal, environmentally or otherwise, but sometimes it's just about survival mode.
Totally. Sometimes you just have to. And their MVP appliance during this time, the one thing they couldn't live without.
The Instant Pot. Apparently, it was indispensable for making quick, relatively easy meals without needing a full kitchen setup.
Good tip. And prepping and freezing meals ahead of time is another smart survival tactic they mentioned.
Yeah, a simple but actually powerful insight into easing the burden later, especially when you're exhausted and just don't have the facilities. It helps avoid total reliance on expensive takeout every single night.
Makes sense. And importantly, they also touch on mental health strategies during this period. It's not just about the physical setup.
Yes, exactly. Creating a designated dust-free sanctuary zone, like maybe your bedroom, make that off limits to the chaos as much as possible. That's presented as a must.
A sanctuary zone, I like
Mm.
that.
And also scheduling strategic nights away, if you can swing it. Especially during peak mess or noise periods, it can provide crucial mental breaks.
These preparations sound like they really make the unavoidable mess significantly more bearable. It's about managing expectations again, isn't it?
They are definitely about proactively managing the discomfort, yeah? And preserving your well-being during what is, let's face it, a pretty disruptive time in your home.
Okay, finally, let's talk about the outcome. Reflecting on the transformation and, crucially, how the source defines success at the end of it all.
Right. The source briefly recounts their own journey transforming this dated 1960s ranch kitchen into a much more functional open concept space that worked for them.
And we heard about their specific design choices, right? The white oak cabinets, those terrazzo-inspired counters, the matte black fixtures they liked, and that statement island pendant.
Exactly. But the ultimate success, according to the source, wasn't just about the visual transformation, how it looked in photos. It was about how the kitchen functioned for their life.
Oh, function again.
Yeah, the improved workflow, the smart storage solutions they put in, the layered lighting they planned. It's about the space performing beautifully in a practical sense.
The guide kind of circles back then to reinforce the overall strategy that led to their successful outcome, which was
Having those clear priorities right from the start, setting reasonable expectations about the timeline, and importantly, budget flexibility, remembering that contingency fund,
Hmm.
and documenting absolutely everything.
the emphasis on documentation seems key. What kind of documentation?
Having everything in writing is crucial. Quotes, contracts,
Hmm.
any change orders need to be written down and signed off, and visually documenting too.
Visually,
Like-
like taking photos.
Exactly, taking photos of the invisible work, the plumbing, the electrical before the walls get closed up. It's incredibly useful for reference later and for accountability.
That visual documentation.
Mhm.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly useful down the line for future maintenance or if questions pop up.
It absolutely is peace of mind, again.
And the ultimate definition of success that the source finally lands on, what was
Okay.
their big takeaway?
It's actually a really powerful insight, I think. Success isn't measured by achieving magazine cover perfection. It's measured by creating a space that genuinely serves your lifestyle beautifully.
So it's perfect because it's perfect for you and how you actually live your life in that space.
Exactly. It's a deeply personal definition of success.
Yeah.
Not someone else's standard.
Okay, so we've journeyed through this deep dive into the source's guide. We've covered the absolute necessity of that budget reality check up front.
Finding your personal vision, both style and function.
Setting those realistic expectations for the timeline, adding buffer time.
Yep. The crucial decision of building the right team, finding that contractor partner,
And of course, the practical ways to actually survive the inevitable chaos of living through it.
and all culminating in creating a space that genuinely enhances your daily life.
Yeah. This guide and our deep dive into it, it really reinforces that while a kitchen renovation is undeniably challenging, approaching it with solid planning, with flexibility, and keeping an eye on these insights gained from others' experiences, it makes it a truly rewarding journey in the end.
Right. It results in a space that goes beyond just looking good. It actually works for you.
It's a transformation that impacts not just your home's value, maybe, but your daily experience within it. How
Yeah.
you feel every morning making coffee.
Exactly. Your quality of life.
And if the ultimate measure of success, according to this source, isn't about that flawless magazine-ready perfection, but really about creating a space that truly serves your lifestyle beautifully. Well, this leaves us with a final thought for you to consider. What does that definition of success, your success, mean for how you might approach other projects in your own home? And maybe, what unexpected lessons or insights might you uncover about your own needs, your own resilience along the way, as you work to make a space truly yours?